Phases. I used to keep time in phases to mark the passage of time. There was the mega building hole-in-the-wall phase, the group home phase, the Mox phase, and most recently, the V phase, as I called it in my head. I'd entered each of them with optimism, happy to leave behind the trials and pitfalls that had beaten me down, but I had never entered a phase with such dread as I was now. I'd taken to calling it the lie phase, and for the first time in my life, I had no idea what awaited me. Not that I had ever known what I was getting myself into before, but there had always been some kind of structure I could anchor myself to. In the V phase, rhythm had become that structure, but now it was gone. In its absence, I'd set up a temporary system over the last week that, while not perfect, had given me something to work with. I had learned a great deal from V's experience, most notably that trying to shock myself back into a state of normalcy was a recipe for disaster. Slow and steady, right foot, left, was a much better way to settle back into things. I had found that half of a beauty was the right amount for my physiology, just enough to keep me from descending back into the nightmares that had plagued my sleep, but not so much that I would wake up each morning feeling like I was standing on the cusp of that horrible night again. But as if the lie phase wasn't bad enough, the V phase continued to intrude upon my life. It had taken me a moment to recognize the name that appeared on my holo. Sure, I'd only known her for a few weeks before my life had collapsed, but in those few weeks, I had gotten to know her in a way few ever would. Katie? Hi, Judy. Hey, how are you? I suddenly felt like I had sand in my mouth. The last time I had seen her, she had been dragged off by one of the claws, the same one who ran Clouds. She too had become a victim, and I knew exactly who was to blame for that. I'm alright, Katie shrugged. Been getting used to things here at Clouds. How've you been? I've been okay, I guess. A long silence filled the air as we both seemed to struggle with what to say next. I suspected Katie was just as surprised she'd called me as I was. She didn't look bad, all things considered. So, I was just calling 'cause I wanted to say thanks. You wanted to thank me? The words made my stomach roll. I knew Katie was remarkably innocent for someone who'd grown up in Night City, but to thank the very person responsible for tearing away what little innocence she had left? Then again, maybe that was a sign there was still some of that spark left in her. Yeah, Katie continued. I was really happy to work at your studio. Learned a lot. Katie, I finally said, you shouldn't be thanking me. This was all my fault. What do you mean? You know what I mean, Katie. What happened to you? What happened to Roxanne and all the others? None of it would have happened if I hadn't roped you into this mess. The confusion on Katie's face gave way to sadness. I don't think it was all your fault, Judy. All you did was try to help me and the others. And you did, too. I'm actually making some decent eddies here, and I'm saving up now so I can learn how to be a braindance editor, like you. It was hard to breathe over the lump forming in my throat. It was tragic just how much hope she still had. How the fuck was that possible after everything I had done to her? I cleared my throat and blinked away the tears forming in my eyes. That's great, I guess. You can do it, Katie, if you work really hard. Don't ever think you can't. Katie smiled. Watching the thin wrinkles forming near the corners of her lips, it occurred to me I'd rarely seen her happy. Confusion and fear seemed to be her default states, but joy? It was a good look on her, even if it wouldn't last. I think so too. I've been reading up on some back issues of Braindance Quarterly I got my hands on. It's a lot to figure out, and I don't understand a lot of it, but I like it anyway. So, You said things at Clouds are going alright? Yeah, Katie replied. I mean, I wouldn't say they're great or anything. It's not like your studio. That was great. But the other dolls are nice to me, and the bosses usually leave me alone. I frowned. Usually? There it was. The natural, relaxed state of her face appeared. The same one that conveyed a lifetime of fear and uncertainty. One which I had added to. I mean... Her voice trailed off, and she glanced away from the screen. I shouldn't have said anything. In fact, that simple lesson could have saved me a world of trouble. Would I ever learn? It's okay, Katie. We don't have to talk about it. I'm sorry I brought it up. Thanks. But you said you're making some good eddies. I am. Her face brightened once again. Tiffany said that her and the others are also getting paid more and that things are better. That was great to hear. Really. Instead of offering the dolls a better future, I'd managed to line their pockets with enough eddies that they would never again be a flight risk for the suits running things upstairs. I had enabled them to be nothing more than whores until their profitability expired. Even though I was glad to see that Katie had kept moving forward, right foot, left foot, I suddenly didn't want to talk to her anymore. Listen, Katie, I shied away from the screen so she couldn't see how red my face was becoming. I'm kinda in the middle of something. Oh shit, I'm sorry. I'll let you go. No, I mean, I do gotta go, but I'm still glad you called and that you're doing okay, I guess. Me too. I was worried about you the last time I saw you. I'm glad you're doing preem. I swallowed hard. Alright. Take care, okay? You too, Judy. Bye. Bye. Katie's face had barely vanished from my screen before I collapsed on the couch and closed my eyes. This had certainly thrown a curveball at what had, up until recently, been a decent Friday off work. Susie had given me an earful for taking yet another day off, but I needed to keep from pushing myself too hard. But that hadn't been my only reason. Selfishly, the message V had sent earlier in the morning had piqued my interest. Call in at Lizzie's and bust out your best dress. I got a plan, and you know what that means. See you at 6. A mixture of fear and excitement coursed through my veins as I read the words over again. Realizing it was almost 5 o'clock, I forced myself off of the couch and made my way to the storage room. It took some digging to reach the freestanding dress hanger nestled near the back corner. We had bought it, along with many of the garments draped on it, not long after V had moved in with me. I stepped around a cluster of boxes and considered my options. Without knowing what V was planning, I didn't know what to choose. Your best dress. My eyes settled upon a sophisticated garment that hung loosely on one of the hangers. I ran a finger along the smooth fabric, noting with dismay the faint hint of dust that had collected on my finger. While the instructions probably called for having it dry cleaned before being worn, I'd have to make do with tossing it in the dryer on low heat for a few minutes. I took a shower and tried to stay calm as I scrubbed myself clean and washed my hair, but I felt a strange fluttering in my chest that became more persistent with each passing minute. It had been so long since I'd felt nervous like this. V would be home in less than an hour. I was only gone an hour. If I'd just known. And considering how chipper and upbeat she'd been recently, I sensed she wouldn't disappoint me tonight. Hopefully, I wouldn't disappoint her. After I had dried myself off, I slid the dress over my skin and pulled it snug. When I felt like I'd tugged any wrinkles or folds out, I studied my reflection in the mirror. I had bought it years ago before I'd met V, and was pleased to see it still fit. In fact, it seemed rather loose in places it shouldn't have been. But I couldn't stop myself from smiling as I ran my hands along the thin black fabric, allowing my fingers to trace along the sin leather accents that ran along the ribs. My eyes briefly lingered upon the hint of cleavage I knew would drive V wild, and considering it was strapless and cut off well above the knees, she wouldn't be the only one getting an eyeful. By the time I had finished applying my makeup and straightening my hair, my heart was pounding in my chest. I checked the time. It was nearly 6 on the dot, and I could hear rustling from the kitchen. After taking a final glance at myself, I drew one final nervous breath and stepped out of the bathroom. and my jaw dropped. Fuck. V had propped herself against the counter so that she was bent over with one leg crossing the other. She glanced over her shoulder at me with a sultry look, but my gaze was focused on other things. The silver dress she'd squeezed into clung to every curve of her body, so much so that I could make out the faint definition of her obliques through the shiny material. Her ass, though, I couldn't take my eyes off of it, something V was using to her advantage as she proudly displayed it for me. And here I was thinking I was being suggestive. She was outright begging to be fucked. Considering that I could already feel myself becoming wet just by looking at her, perhaps there wouldn't be a need to pop any ice after all. I'm up here, V said huskily. Are you? Can't seem to find you. V grinned and turned, depriving me of the view, but allowing me to drink in the rest of her beauty. Makeup and freshly styled hair might look good on a mercenary, but V had said long ago that anyone in her line of work who spent more than 5 minutes on appearances was just asking for trouble. As a result, she rarely went to such lengths to clean herself up like this. Can you see me now? Shit, V. Just where? How? Gonk. V laughed. I have my ways just like you do, clearly. V didn't bother with subtlety as her eyes wandered across every inch of my body. I swayed alluringly before her, feeling like a meal she was about to consume. So, you said you got a plan for us tonight? Indeed I do. Are you planning on telling me what it is? V winked, sending a shiver across my skin. Her heels clacked on the floor as she sauntered past me. Come on, our ride for the evening is downstairs. Our ride? Playing along, I grabbed my own heels and slid them over my feet, grateful the cuts and blisters had healed up. We were a jarring sight as we strode down the graffiti-covered hall dressed like a pair of corpos who'd found themselves on the wrong end of town. When I turned the corner, I gasped as I caught sight of an enormous Delamain limo parked at the bottom of the fire escape. V? What the fuck did you do? V didn't turn around as she descended the stairs, but I was certain a proud grin had spread across her face. Come on. I shook my head in disbelief and followed her, being careful not to lose my balance or twist an ankle. There was a special place in hell for whoever had come up with heels. V seemed to be on the verge of laughter by the time I reached the bottom. I couldn't blame her, considering my eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets when the passenger door opened automatically. But when that smell reached my nostrils, I froze. I'd rarely had the opportunity to breathe that intoxicating new car scent, and it always made my heart race. Realizing V was waiting for me, I slid inside and scooched across the crisp leather interior. It had to be a factory new model. As soon as sensors felt my weight settle on the seat, the door closed, sealing us inside. I looked about the interior with a sense of wonder. There was easily enough room for at least half a dozen passengers. A thin blue strip of neon lighting traced along the roof and bathed us in its glow. A large screen was embedded into the cushioned surface ahead of us, and the text displayed upon it revealed our destination. My eyes popped open. No way. There wasn't a chance in hell she'd pull something like this off, right? Blue? V bit her lip and turned her attention towards the screen. Let's go, Del. A pale, androgynous face appeared on the display and spoke to us in a synthetic voice. Of course, Miss V. I project we will arrive at Blue in 24 minutes, leaving you with plenty of time to meet your reservation. Please, sit back and enjoy the view. Complimentary refreshments are available from the console beneath the screen. I turned towards V as the limo pulled around the lot. You got us reservations at Blue? Damn right I did. V exuded smugness as she idly traced her fingers along the cool leather seat. With the way she was sitting, one leg lazily draped over the other, she certainly looked the part of somebody used to such indulgences. V, she quickly raised her hand, cutting me off. No talking about Eddies tonight. This is for us. But if it'll make you feel better so you can relax a little, this isn't on our dime. Tonight, We are going to enjoy the very best cuisine Night City has to offer. Compliments of Dino Dinovich. Dino? You mean the fixer who's been throwing work your way? He's paying for all this? Yep, V nodded. According to him, I've become the most reliable merc he contracts with, and after the shit that went down with Wakako's goons, he wanted to make it up to me. As ready as I was to sit back and cut loose, Blue, holy fuck. I couldn't hide my suspicion. Oddly enough, that seemed to humor V even further. Relax, Jude. The guy doesn't have any ulterior motives and isn't trying to get in my pants. Don't think he could get it up for me anyway since he's gay. Oh, V chuckled. He offered me a nice cut of eddies at first, and I was going to take him until he mentioned he had reservations tonight at Blue with some piece of ass he's seeing. I made an off-the-cuff joke about handing the table over to me, and, well, here we are. I relaxed as V recounted her story. Normally, I would have been pissed if she had turned away a stack of eddies, but she had gone all out to give us a great date night, and the grumbling in my stomach was making it difficult to think logically. Blue. The dining establishment held a mythic status among the city's elite. I had never bothered to look up their menu, considering such a caliber of restaurant was far outside of our price range. I'd heard rumors of small appetizers that would run for as much as a month's worth of ramen, but I had sneaked a peek at a picture or two whenever my flights of fancy took hold of me. My anticipation grew as we made our smooth excursion through the city towards city center. The soundproof cabin filtered out the angry sounds of traffic, allowing us the opportunity to focus on the beautiful skyline. But it was an opportunity I was missing out on as I kept glancing back at V. You're staring, she said, not shifting her gaze from the window. So what if I am? What are you going to do about it? I was shocked by my own flirtatiousness since I hadn't made any kind of advance on her in weeks, and for good reason. Every time I rushed into things, they tended to blow up in my face, and I wanted to do something right for once. To think with my head, especially when it came to matters of V's ass. V turned and raised an eyebrow. I could tell you what I'd like to do about it. I cast a dirty glare at her and returned my attention toward the window, anticipating the culinary adventure awaiting us. A row of champagne glasses was on display next to the console, and I was tempted to see what refreshments were available, but I forced myself to abstain. My stomach was empty, and if I started filling up on booze, then by the time we arrived, I would be stumbling through the door. Delamain was renowned for punctuality, so there was no need to check if we were on time as we pulled to a stop in front of a colossal skyscraper. We have arrived at the Caro building, Delamain spoke. Blue is located on the top floor. I have arranged for a valet to greet and escort you to your reservation. When you are ready to depart, please let the valet know, and I will be waiting here to take you back home. Thank you for choosing Delamain, and enjoy your evening. The door opened, and we were greeted with a cool breeze as we stepped outside. I glanced up at the massive structure towering over us. While it wasn't the tallest building in Night City, it did claim to have the most commanding view of any restaurant along the entire West Coast. I don't know how anyone could validate that claim, nor did I give a shit as a man in a crisp-fitting tuxedo and a friendly smile on his face approached us. Good evening. You are V, correct? The one and only. Good. And that would make you Judy, yes? I nodded, suddenly unsure of what to say. How does he know my name? V told him, of course. Settle down, Judy. You're safe. Don't you know that? Excellent. He neatly clasped his hands together in front of him. Please follow me, and I'll guide you to the lift. I glanced nervously at V before taking her hand into my own. We followed the valet through a wide set of glass doors that opened into a massive atrium which climbed several stories into the air. It was incredible. This single building exuded more wealth and stature than probably half of Santo Domingo combined. Complete with a retail mall, business and corporate offices, luxury condominiums, a movie theater, private security. It was its own self-contained city, a far cry from the world that existed outside. I gaped through the windows of each luxury outlet, feeling an equal mix of desire and disgust at the ridiculously expensive wares on display. Fortunately, V's attention was focused on the valet, who had led us toward a bank of elevators, one of which awaited us with its door already parted. When you exit, please proceed to the entrance on your left to be seated. Thanks, V said. We stepped inside and the door promptly closed behind us. I gasped as the surrounding walls suddenly turned transparent and the elevator began to ascend. Holy shit. Yeah, V agreed. We were provided with an incredible view of the interior of the building. I had the distinct sense that with every inch we climbed, we were somehow rising in our status as well. We were no longer some fucked up couple living out of a hole-in-the-wall apartment that was filled with lies. We were now part of the wealthy elite. Top-tier executives, politicians, celebrities, it didn't matter. This was the dream I'd struggled to push away my entire life as I endured one crushing failure after another. I wanted it so badly, and I despised myself for it. Better be one hell of a restaurant, V chuckled. I'm fucking starving. Hey V, yeah? I chewed nervously on my lip. Even though V had said not to talk about it, I couldn't help myself. I know Dino gave you his reservation, but V smiled. It's all been taken care of. VIP Platinum. Basically, it means it's all you can eat and we don't gotta pay for shit. Drinks too. Fuck, V. You did good. Before she could say anything, the walls faded back to their solid state and the lift came to a stop. A gentle chime sounded from above, and the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit hallway. The valet's instructions on how to reach the restaurant weren't needed. My nose could easily guide us as I breathed in a wonderful aroma that filled the air. I was gracious for the gentle jazz music playing over the speakers, so half of the floor didn't hear my stomach growl. It was impossible to get lost. At the far end of the hallway, directly ahead, 4 letters glowed with a brilliant radiance above the entrance. A pair of attendants standing outside smiled and parted a pair of heavy oak doors for us. No picture could have done it justice. The ocean had always fascinated me ever since the first time I had dived into the small retention pond outside of Laguna Bend. I had been chided by my abuela for how toxic the water was, but I was captivated by the discovery of an entirely new world existing beneath its murky surface, just waiting for me to discover it. Now, decades later, that passion was brought to life before my eyes. Dark wood floors, like something out of a pirate ship, caught most of the dim blue light shining from above. But that was only the beginning of the nautical theme. I knew the turquoise ocean that stretched across the walls was only an illusion. Even luxury had to give way to physics. There was no chance they had actually hauled the whales and dolphins that swam about more than 100 stories into the air. Still, the effect was startling. Long rows of illuminated tables fanned out across the expansive establishment. I was confused when I saw the thin streams of bubbles rising within them before realizing each table was actually an aquarium filled with all varieties of coral and sea creatures peacefully swimming about. Ropes and nets hung from the ceiling, and beyond the tables I spotted an open kitchen with dozens of chefs and attendants hastily moving about. Orders were being barked out as fires and smoke rose from the grills. The dull roar of conversation and tableware filled the space. Welcome to Blue, one of the hosts greeted us as they grabbed a pair of wooden menus. V and Judy, please follow me. I stayed a few steps behind V as we followed the host through the maze of tables. Everywhere I looked, smiling diners talked and laughed with one another, dressed in all manner of lavish outfits. Our dresses were acceptable by comparison, but only by the barest of standards. And while I had never been ashamed to flaunt my tattoos, I still felt out of place with all the fancy cyberware and real skin on display, even if no one was bothering to give me a second look. I didn't belong here. Here we are. We were seated at one of the best tables available, affording us a fantastic view of the kitchen. But as elegant as the setting was, the staff wasn't so pretentious to actually pull the chairs away to seat us. I'd seen that done in movies before, and it always seemed ridiculous. Once we were situated, the host laid the menus on the tables. Like a carefully choreographed presentation, a woman in a formal blue tuxedo stepped forward with a warm smile upon her face. This is your private waitress, Carmel. She'll see to all your needs this evening. Enjoy. I caught the look V gave me as the host walked away and suppressed a grin. Good evening and welcome to Blue, Carmel began. Can I start you two off with some water? Sounds as good a place as any, V replied. Excellent. I'll give you a few minutes to look over our cocktail menu. V and I exchanged glances. Carajo. I don't know why I whispered when I couldn't even make out what the couple sitting next to us were saying. You can say that again. Carajo, I chuckled. We took a moment to look around the restaurant, studying every detail and taking it all in. What do you think this place pulls in on an average night? V asked. Ballpark. Don't know, and I don't think I want to know either. Truer words had never been spoken. I had only taken a cursory glance at the cocktail menu and was already astounded at the numbers displayed next to each selection. Clearly, this was where the Eddies were at, not the BD field. V lifted one of the menus to her face, doing a poor job of hiding her own shock as her eyes darted across the myriad of options. Listen to this. The Orca. Bolshevik vodka, Armagnac gin, blue curacao, vermouth with a lime twist and an ocean salt rim. Fuck me now, please. Hearing V list off the ingredients was making my mouth water in ways the incredible aromas from the kitchen had failed to do. Sounds preem, but I think I'm gonna go with the signature blue. Bolshevik vodka, Boomelant coconut rum, blue curacao, organic pineapple, and lemon juice. Toasted coconut flake rim and an edible orchid. Sweet fucking Jesus, that's a whole meal right there. I'd put our order in, but... V tapped at the wooden menu. Even though there wasn't any technology built inside of it, our waitress somehow appeared right at that moment holding a pair of chilled glasses in her hands. After ordering our drinks, we made small talk, which meant gushing over how incredible everything was. The ambiance, the food, the outfits. We even spotted Caleb Morricone, the actor who'd played Jake in the Bushido series, sitting just a few tables away from us. Everything was perfect. And then the drinks came out. I knew this wasn't a dive bar or nightclub where it might be acceptable to chug. The expectation here was to politely sip your drink so that by the time your dinner arrived, you weren't so inebriated that you couldn't taste your own food. But I was powerless after my first taste, and before I knew it, I was holding a glass of ice in my hand. Still wishing I had taken the Eddies? V asked with a knowing smile. Could always call Dino and tell him he can have his table back. I don't know. Menu looks pretty bland, right? I can't believe they don't have any Mexican food here. Where's the fish tacos and guac? I chuckled and gave my glass an idle shake to rattle the ice inside. I'll say this. 1 or 2 more of these, and I might just be convinced this was one of your better ideas. Oh, I'll have you convinced, V said with a sly grin. With a roll of my eyes, I studied the crowd. It was strange how quickly one acclimated to new surroundings. The aquarium that was our table already seemed less lavish, the menu less outrageous than when I had first seen it. V followed my gaze. People watching? She asked. I nodded as an attractive couple seated against the opposite wall caught my eye. They weren't leaving much to the imagination as a man lifted his partner back to his feet and pulled him into a loving embrace, earning themselves a round of celebratory applause from those seated nearby. Even from where we were seated, I could make out the sparkle from the gold band that now adorned his finger. Marital bliss, V observed. I give it 3 months. Really? I would have thought only a few weeks. Oh? And why's that? I grinned and leaned across the table, gesturing for V to do the same so we wouldn't be overheard. Do you see the dude who was being proposed to? Yeah? What about him? His fly's open. Jesus Christ, V laughed. But why only a few weeks? Maybe they were jerking each other under the table. I'd call that true love. I shrugged, trying to think of a rational explanation for the wild story I was concocting. Means he forgets all the little details, unlike his partner, who obviously thought all of this through. He won't be present in the moment, and that won't last long before it'll all fall apart. V leaned back in her chair and raised an eyebrow at me. That's pretty grim. Not nearly as grim as his backstory, I quipped. Interesting. V chewed on her lip as her eyes darted across the crowd, trying to find our next victim. A few tables behind you on your left, the woman in the ivory dress. I nodded and casually craned my neck so I could see over my shoulder. She wasn't hard to spot. What's her deal? I turned back to V. Clearly a corpo spy on a secret mission involving espionage. Her name is Natasha, and she's employed with Militech. How the hell did you come up with that one? Don't question me, V. It all adds up. I don't know, V said skeptically. Think you got her all wrong. Now it was my turn to have some fun. I rested my elbows on the table. Yes, I knew that was a big no-no for such an upscale place, but my head was already spinning, and patiently waited for V's explanation. V downed the last of her drink. She's a fresh suicide survivor. I think she thought she could try a fresh start at things by having dinner with a chum of hers. What? I knew V had a strange sense of humor I couldn't always follow, but why the fuck would she ever joke about something like suicide? She knew that was a triggering topic for me after what had happened to Evelyn. I'm serious, V noted, seeing the dour expression on my face. You didn't see her wrist? Even though I knew I was taking a risk by being so obvious, I shifted in my seat and turned so I could get a good look at the woman. Holy shit. A fresh scar traced along the inside of her wrist, one which was impossible to miss. And yet, I had. It was a call for help, V said casually as I turned back to her. And the guy's got a ring on his finger with a thick indent behind it, and she doesn't. He's proud of his marriage, meaning they're chums. I was at a loss for words. This was Blue, the finest dining establishment in City Center and one of the top-rated restaurants in all of Night City. This was supposed to be where deals were made, where celebrations were had, but the illusion was shattered. Who knew what horror stories lay behind the eyes of those who dined around us? I clearly didn't have a clue, but V had spotted it plain as day. What else did she see? Sorry, V said finally. I didn't mean to bring the mood down. It's all right. It's just a little heavy to see something like that here. Anywhere, for that matter. I know. Guess it's true what they say. Eddies really can't buy happiness. V was rolling her glasses between her fingers. I could see she wanted to say something, but was searching for the right words. My stomach no longer growled at the heavenly aroma filling the air. Judy, do you ever think about her? Evie, I mean. Where the fuck was the waitress when I needed her? I searched about, but came up empty. You okay? V asked. Yeah, I guess. My sincerest apologies. I breathed an enormous sigh of relief as the waitress suddenly appeared next to our table. The reprieve wouldn't last long, but it would give me a few seconds to figure out what to say. Would you care for another round? Or perhaps you'd like to put in an order for something to start with? I'd strongly recommend the calamari. Yes, I replied, a little too quickly for my own liking. To the drink, I mean. V? V nodded her agreement. Excellent. I'll take these out of your way. The waitress lifted the empty glasses off the table, and I'll be right back with your drinks. The entire exchange had lasted only a few seconds, not long enough for V to forget the conversation that had led up to it. So, Evelyn, do you think about her? Sometimes, like right now. Me too. I was surprised by her admission. She knew Evie had been my best friend, but they had only met a couple of times before she died. The longest of which had been the day she'd lifted Evelyn's body out of the tub after Judy. The image of my bathtub smeared with Evelyn's blood had found its way into the forefront of my mind. Why did V have to bring such a painful memory up here of all places where she knew I couldn't make a scene? Yet I was on the verge of making a scene. My lip was quivering and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to get it to stop. Okay, we should talk about something else. No shit. It's okay, V, really. I was just surprised that you still think about her. She was my chum, not yours. Yeah, but I've never shaken the thought that when someone does something like that, that we're all a little diminished by it. That's a really beautiful way of looking at something so awful. A large flame erupted from the kitchen, causing us both to turn. The chef stood over a skillet preparing a dish with expert precision. It occurred to me we hadn't even looked at the menu yet. Maybe it was the strength of the drink I had just gulped down, but I suddenly felt emboldened. V? Why'd you bring up Evelyn? I don't know, V shrugged. I guess I was just a little curious. Come on, that's bullshit. Tell me why. V glanced at the bar. At least she wasn't bothering with lying or trying to pass it off as idle chatter. But why was she so uncomfortable? I mean, it's really not a mystery, is it? I saw the cuts on that woman's wrists, and Evelyn popped into my head for obvious reasons. It got me wondering why one person can call out for help, while another, Evelyn in this instance, couldn't. Or didn't. Now this was interesting, and not the answer I'd been expecting. I don't know either. I beat myself up plenty over the years, wondering if maybe I'd missed something. You know you didn't, Jude. She was catatonic when we pulled her out of that place, and she never snapped out of it. Sure, I offered, but something had to be going on inside of her head when she cut herself. Something that wasn't good. V shook her head in disgust. Death's head. Those words sent a shiver up my spine. It was no secret that XBDs were easy to find on the black market, and there was no shortage of rings who produced them, often involving unwilling participants. Those fuckers had gotten their hands on Evelyn and forced her to scroll things no one should ever have to endure. Evelyn Parker had ceased to exist afterward, and the woman V and I had rescued from them was nothing more than a hollow shell of her former self. But we got him, V continued. We got justice for Evelyn. Took the whole lot of them out. You did that, V, and you got most of them, not all. Still sickens me to think that some of those fuckers got away, that they're still out there on the streets doing the same thing to others. V nodded solemnly. We can't fix the whole world, but we did a good thing. And I say we because it was both of us, Judy. Sure, I may have pulled her out of that place, but you're the one who took her in and gave her the best shot she had at getting her life back. It felt good to hear that validation. I was honest when I said I thought I might have missed something, some sign, that Evelyn was about to end things. I had tried so hard for days, weeks to bring her back, feeding her, giving her baths, lifting her off of the toilet, all in the slim hope she might blink an eye or speak a solitary word. I had tried so fucking hard. I don't know if her life was hers anymore. Don't know if she was even really alive inside. She was, Judy. How do you know? If she wasn't truly alive, then she couldn't have actually died. Say what you want about the millions of angry assholes passing us by every day, but I gotta believe each one of us is alive. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? I couldn't argue with her logic. I'd spent countless hours sitting on the rooftop, looking out at the deceitful skyline of Night City, feeling like a lost atom in an endless ocean. Was that all I was? All I would ever be? This was too much for us to be talking about. We were supposed to be having a good time, not contemplating suicide. Like I said, a beautiful way of looking at it. Clearly you missed your calling as an artist. I bet you could paint all of Night City in watercolor. V chuckled at my blatant attempt at redirection, and I quickly felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. I spotted the waitress getting our drinks at the bar before turning my attention back to V. And apparently, you're quite the palm reader too, I grinned. Oh, is that right? Indeed it is. Put a token in V, and she'll tell you your whole life story. Well, I can't say I agree with your thoughts about me being a palm reader. You know, I thought I saw marks on your wrists a couple weeks back, so that tells you how poor my mystical eye is. But as an artist, I'd like to think I got a little talent tucked away someplace. I nearly snatched my drink out of the waitress's hand when she came back. Jesus, she had seen the marks. So is there anything you'd like to start with tonight? We probably need a few minutes to look the menu over. V replied.
Of course. Our special tonight is an ocean-caught sautéed Dover sole with toasted almonds, wild mushrooms, and a soy lime emulsion served with a side of Osetra caviar. I'll give you a few moments to look over the menu.
I followed along as best I could, though after a while, I was simply bobbing my head so it looked like I understood what she was saying. There was no ramen to be found, or burritos for that matter. They would probably think I was joking if I asked for a slice of pizza. Once again, I felt completely out of place. Without a second thought, I raised the glass to my lips and took a large swig, emptying half of it.
Easy there, V said. It's a marathon tonight, not a sprint.
Right, V.
Besides, I want my date to still be standing when we got home. It'll make it easier for me when I'm the one dropping to her knees.
I chewed my lip in response to the wink she flashed me, but it was all happening on autopilot. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the same one I'd gotten used to finding passed out on the couch. She was clear-eyed, sharp, and I was lost.
So, now it's my turn to broach a sensitive topic, if that's all right.
V seemed surprised as she sipped her drink, but there was no wavering in her confidence.
How are you doing without the beauties?
V grinned slyly.
I thought that's what you were going to ask me. I'm sorry, we don't know. It's all right. You deserve the truth. And the truth is, it's not easy. At all. I'm back to being afraid of going to sleep at night. And now with my nightmares coming back, well, it's not easy.
She had come so far over the last month. I was envious of her, even if I understood that the only reason she had made so much progress was because I had caught her. If I hadn't...
Do you ever feel cravings for them? Sorry if it's a gaunt question. I'm just curious how you're feeling.
V shook her head.
Not physically. They're not addictive in that way. There's no high. But you saw what happened to me the other day when I broke down. That was pure panic. I guess it was silly of me to hope that my body would adapt and the nightmares wouldn't come back.
V chuckled to herself.
Obviously, that wasn't the case. We were doing it wrong, trying to get you off of them, I mean. Worried we still might be.
No, V shook her head.
I don't think that. That meltdown I had, and looking back at it, the warning signs were everywhere. I could feel myself getting closer and closer to some breaking point, but I kept pushing myself. Even that day, I should have stayed home, but I feel like I can recognize it better now and slow myself down when I need to.
Why couldn't I be as open as she was?
She owned all of her mistakes. The lies, the addiction, all of it. And meanwhile, I couldn't open up to her about anything. Why couldn't I be strong like her? No sense beating yourself up, V. I probably don't say it enough. In fact, I'll fess up and say I know I don't say it enough. But I'm proud of you. Thanks, V grinned. I am too.
My envy was turning into outright jealousy. She was accomplishing something that would better herself, that would better us. The last time I had even felt close to that had been when I'd started the studio. And even then, that had been for me. When was the last time I had actually done something for us? Sitting at that table with V smiling back at me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was the reason we weren't working. Every relationship depended upon trust and truth. Sure, little white lies always existed. And I knew everyone had a dark side that tried to creep into their thoughts in the worst ways. I sure as hell did. But V was an open book now, just as she'd been the day we had first met, and she wanted me to read about who she was. And me? I was slammed shut, hoping my glossy cover would be enough to keep her interested. But the pages that lay inside, the words inscribed on those pages, manipulator, liar, abuser, monster. No, I couldn't tell her. It would crush her, even if she was stronger than I ever knew. I brought my drink back to my mouth. The familiar weight of the glass in my hand was the only thing I was sure of anymore.